Hello, welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And I just have to clarify, get this off my chest. I was thinking about one of my clients who has asked for magical protection, and this drama has been going on for a few months. And recently I had to release a friend who keeps saying that she believes in Mother Mary and Jesus and her Mormon roots, yet she's a witch, and she's just diving into the hidden truth of Jesus, the New Age truth. But yet um, she has all this New Age influence. So this happens with a lot of people. They may have been brought up in a religion. Then they realize, you know what, there's something more to me and there's more to life. And so then they branch out, seeking some type of spirituality that resonates with them. They want to be empowered. So, but maybe naturally they're a witch, you know, a magic user of some form, and they move into spirituality. They get to know a little bit about energy work, a little bit about chakras and crystals. But then they still have a need to be devoted and focused, to give their love and attention to worship, to be a part of a community and an evolutionary movement. And so they go into the New Age world. The New Age world just picks stuff up that sounds good. A little bit of Kabbalah, a little bit of astrology, a little bit of deity worship, a little bit of paganism. So it's kind of like you can fill your bucket at the bazaar. You can go to the flea market. You can go to the discount store, and all these little trinkets you just put in your basket for $5.99. You walk away and there you are. You're now whatever you want to be. And you feel good about yourself because you really didn't have to pick a path. With One Love and Unity movement, it's like with not being judgmental and being open minded, you said yes to everything. And then now your energy is scattered. You don't know who you are, and you haven't really developed, you don't have the foundation yet to then go into all of that. So, if you're coming from a religious background, beliefs were replacing your personality development. So, your ego is a weak structure of beliefs that are strongly enforced, given to you from an outside source. And so anything that threatens and challenges those beliefs, you become reactive. And we call that, challenging your faith. You take it personal. And it becomes very personal because all you really were growing up with was a set of beliefs. And so you don't really know how to go from beliefs to personal power. And this is really kind of a deep subject, and that's just kind of some of the disconnect, the miswiring, and then the pitfalls of not being clear with yourself, not knowing what path you truly want, and maybe even really knowing, okay, this is where I'm at. I did come from a religious background, or whatever, these adopted beliefs, and so now I'm in an experimental phase. So yes, I'm going to go to the New Age world, and that's going to work for me for now, where I get a sample, a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of pagan witchcraft, a little bit of Wicca, a little bit of chakras, a little bit of ascension, a little bit of technology, a little bit of energy. And so that's good. That's like you're a little kid and you're sent out to the world to kind of explore first. And then you find what works for you. Um, but the problem is a lot of people aren't allowing themselves to explore, number one, and and a lot of people don't know who they are. They don't have a strong enough sense of self. And so we look towards religious practices. We look towards technology. We look towards other people, manifestation, law of attraction, channels, guides, psychics, healers. We look all outside of ourselves to fill up this hole. Um, and that hole is filled when you just build a simple, solid foundation. You just say yes to a path, yes to a belief for a while, and it has to like kind of resonate with who you are. So you might a little self-reflection. So after talking with this client, so she has supposedly this guy who has fallen in love with her, came into her place of work, fallen in love with her, created this really pretty necklace, gave it to her, and she felt like it was energetically messing with her. Then she felt like she was being psychically influenced. So she's gone to all these different healers, and really she's a very powerful person. And so finally I was like, why don't you just do a witch jar? And then she's like, I'm uncomfortable with witchcraft. And I'm like, you are? Because it looks like to me that is your path. So why can't? She's like, well, how do you define magic? Depends upon how you define magic. I'm like, no, magic just is. It's kind of what you do with it and what system you use as the tool to help you focus, channel, and work with magic. So I was like, and spontaneously it comes to me. Don't you think the most powerful thing is a female power? Like our universe, don't you see it in a female image? Like a divine creative cauldron or a womb? Don't you see a great goddess? Don't you naturally, instinctually want to go to this great goddess mother figure for protection, for wisdom, for comfort, for nurturing, for advice, for support? Isn't this like hardwired in you? And so I was like, that's like number one. Number one sign you're a true witch. Honestly, witchcraft is a female empowerment system. And why do you think the whole world, the whole programming tried to destroy witches? Before we had doctors, we had witches. You know? So I'm going to say we had witches and farmers. So isn't it weird how the collective narrative gets rewritten with this agenda from some hidden force that says humans were meat eaters first, then they became farmers, you know, or witches were bad. It was like there was a lot of people who wanted witches out of out of grace. They wanted them to fall. How can we have to remove witches to have Christianity? How come we have to remove Egyptian gods to have Christianity? You know? And so it's come to my attention that modern witchcraft needs a cleanup and through clarity. So if you don't really have a connection with the feminine force, you're not a witch. Period. And this probably explains why Hecate, the goddess of witches, the patron mother, the protector of witches, was telling me, yo, um, if it doesn't go through me, it's not witchcraft. And it makes sense uh, that this is so. So before the fall of witchcraft, it wasn't really called witchcraft. That's not its original name. It was priestess craft. It's the it's the it's not matriarchal, um, but women were the power holders. Women had, I wouldn't say secret, but it's an exclusive natural born right for women or someone working with the feminine energy uh, to be able to bring the divinity of the goddess of the universe, that female principle of the universe, to bring it here to earth, to make things beautiful, to make things comfortable, to heal, to comfort, to share wisdom, to bring forth life, to water the earth. You know, the earth is kind of dry and barren without the water being poured onto it. Without water, there's like no life. You know, there's potential life as earth, but it needs that feminine power. It needs that understanding, that empathy, that sympathy, that compassion, the nurturing, the mother principle. And so, if you're down with that and you don't feel threatened by being honored, you don't feel threatened by being cared for, if you see soft as a strength, which is what intuition is, it's the soft part of intelligence. It's the receptive. All within balance. So, first and foremost, the roots of true witchcraft is a goddess um, spirituality. It's goddess focused. And there's no way around it. I mean, when the goddess pretty much told me herself, she's like, yo, if it doesn't come through me, that witchcraft ain't witchcraft. That's just magic. That's just people playing with magic. You know, that's child's play. But when you get the endorsement of the goddess on your side, the patron mother goddess, now you're really leveling up. It's like the ascended version of witchcraft. So whatever magical practice you do, whatever you're into, whether it's yoga, chakras, there's an ascension path, coming to the realization of oneness, coming to the realization of healing, wholeness, and the evolution that you're a major participant in your own growth. This is what we call the ascension path. So, in a weird way, the Dark Ages took witches out. It took the feminine principle out. And I'm really a little bit surprised I'm even championing this, going with this, because on my personal path, I'm trying to heal the masculine. So it's really interesting that this video is coming up because it is time for the goddess to reemerge, for women to find their power. You know, I'm like, weren't they doing that in the 60s? Apparently not. Well, didn't we? I thought we already got there. But then when we look inside women, the core wounds are still there. And in our society, they're still there. And we have all these stereotypes put out by Hollywood and movies and fairy tales that need to be cleansed. So I feel privileged enough to have past life memory and transpersonal life memories of being in a goddess circle. I have direct experience of being with the goddess and the high priestess and her priestesses. And I will share a little bit because this is where some of this information is coming. It's coming from my gnosis, my direct knowing. It's not made up. It's not, for me, it is more real than this reality. I have memories that were given back to me in a transpersonal vision. And I was in these catacombs that were goddess based. I didn't know that when I was going through it, till, it all like, reveals itself. And I'm there with all these women, and there is like 30 women in a circle. And we put our hands in a certain position and we cast a circle with our bodies. And we activated the circle through sharing in this women's group what we were grateful for. It could have been our children and our opportunity to play mother. It could have been the opportunity to feel the earth as we walked barefoot in the fields, or breathe fresh air. Like this deep gratitude we had for life, being alive in our physical bodies, and being women. Like, and that activated the circle, and our hearts connected, and the energy moved between our hands, palm to palm, as 30 women in this underground cave were there. And then Roman soldiers came and tried to kill everyone. And then it gets more complex. Then inner mysteries are revealed, we shall say. At the end of this huge battle, some of us got away, and in a secret chamber, the wall opens up, and there is a huge cauldron, and there are like 11 priestesses in white, and then the head priestess in black and gold, and her hair was black. And she asked me what I learned, and then the vision was over, and I would call it back in my body. My consciousness, my awareness was back here. And this is just one of so it's like you're being trained by a goddess, by the universe, by the female principle, and your head priestess is a direct channel, the embodiment. She is the queenship of the feminine force, and she has her main priestesses around there, and it's like a school, and you are developing in spiritual knowledge and cosmic knowledge of personal development, co-creation. And this is what it's like at the highest level of witchcraft. I call it now goddesscraft, to put it in true perspective of what it was. So if you're not privileged to be a priestess in training or a part of this goddess group, you're probably doing what I call folk magic. Gathering herbs, sticking them in a jar, chanting a little spell, rudimentary stuff. And I would call that witchcraft in training, because you're just learning to work with nature. You're just learning to work with spirits. You're just learning to empower yourself. But the light switch isn't turned on. the circuits aren't out there. You don't have all the information. You're an outsider. But unconsciously, you're being groomed for the opportunity to choose to go to this next level. So we miss that because you're probably reading a book, or you're watching YouTube videos of people who play with magic and call themselves witches, but they read it from books. And maybe they went to a group of witches, but that high priestess, she just read it from books. So there's not a true handing down of power. There's not the experience, the energy. And it's like, if you're really sitting in these underground caves and you're really there with 30 other people that your life depends on, in total love, in total trust, in a sisterhood experience, even with the dramas that go on, a book doesn't replace it. Your imagination, your hypothesis, your theories, and how you think it is, your little spurts of intuition doesn't replace the full visceral experience of being in those temple experiences. So, another one of my past lives. So, your past lives will always reflect into your current life. So, when I worked at this new age store called the Cosmic Spiral, I met 4 other psychics, and some of us recognized each other from this other lifetime when we were priestesses. So that would be more confirmation of my vision ringing true and being real. So, this other past life is more family oriented. I had a past life in Mesopotamia as a temple priestess, and everyone went to war. They all went over the valley. They all went over the mound. It was like a large hill out to the other person land to fight war. It was required. And our town was, I would call it poor, because all of the men were already at war. So the only people left were women, children, and old people. But so we had a lot of pride, and so everyone in town left. And the only people left back in town were the priestesses, the most sacred, most so, like the national treasure were the priestesses who ran the Mesopotamian temple. We waited, we waited, we waited. Nobody came back. Nobody came back. So, obviously, we lost the war. Everyone was either killed or incorporated, but they could never come back to our village or our town, whatever it was. And so then we just eventually had to walk out because there was nobody. There were just like 3 or 4 priestesses left. This reflects back into my current life in my adoptive family. My aunt, my 2 aunts, were the priestesses that I was working with in the Mesopotamian temple. And my adoptive aunts both lived in the Middle East as children and then came back because their father worked for the US military and they were stationed out in the Middle East. They came back. Then my adoptive dad, he chose to go back over to the Middle East to teach English. He adopted me and brought me back. And so my adoptive family has past life connections to the Middle East and Mesopotamia. So everything happens for a reason, everything's interconnected. When you start looking at those interconnected parts, it kind of spells out who you are. And it's not really, I wouldn't say it's like a decision, it's a truth. You just know. And so it's like another, so another thing that's actually really important in witchcraft, even if you're a solitary witch, is to have the experience of working in a functioning, high functioning coven. I was fortunate enough that in the mystery school I went to, they had a practicing witchcraft program and they had a coven. And they did some very basic temple magic. It wasn't at the level that I was doing it in those lifetimes, but the technology is different. You know, the technology of back then was temple magic. So, from so basically, this might help you fill in the blanks where you're like, I really want to do witchcraft, but I'm not into hexing. Or I really feel like a witch, but writing little spells, putting flowers with it just isn't it for me. You know, or I would love to have a familiar spirit, but all I have is my neighbor's cat. so, and so, if you have a love of nature and you find nature as a source of power and comfort and healing, and this spills over into your magical creations, chances are that's a good indicator that you're a witch. If you would like, or you are connected to a goddess and a deity of a female power, and that's your number one go-to, chances are you're a witch. And so I would say those are the two requirements for being a witch, or really defining witchcraft as a theme: feminine power focused, nature focused, and I'm going to actually say the desire to heal. Because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation on magic. It's all about getting what you want, getting your boyfriend back, getting more money. Um, it's all about me, me, me. Let me get, let me get. And so I'm like, that just sounds like ego magic. It sounds like energy manipulation, self gratification, self grandeur, identity, self importance. It sounds very self centered. So a witch is personally empowered. She's doing it in a weird way for herself. She's empowering herself through understanding who she is and what she's about and how she's interconnected with nature and the divine, different levels, different planes of existence. And it's a co creation. She's like, no, what does the universe want? How do I fit into this? In order to have the power, I must be a servant to that power. I must open up and be receptive to the divine guidance. I must be, I would call it like a humble instrument, a tool of divinity. And so, in order to rule, you also have to serve. So, the Pharaoh serves the gods. And in that service, channels in the information and is the living embodiment of a deity, just like a high priest and a high priestess. And so there is a sacrifice. You have to be groomed. You have to have your ego slowly eliminated uh, to become that hollow bone, that holy vessel, the divine incarnate, to actually have that role. So you must order, so in a weird way, you must serve to gain the power. And in our Western mindset and this modern technology, it's a me, me, me. I want the position, but I want what I want. I want to get something out of it. Really, it's a give. I give myself. I open myself up to receive. And then what I receive, I give. And so it's a continuous flow of being this channel, this beacon of light, this holy vessel. Like that's really what witchcraft is about. People who aren't into that, people who are negative, people who haven't cleared out their ego, people who haven't found the spiritual development, it's just child's play. They're just playing with magic and chants. They're just calling on multiple deities and spirit helpers and entities and demons and familiar spirits and whatever. And they're just grasping at straws. They're taking a little bit of chakras, a little bit of, and it's like, no, focus, commit. Now that you know that witchcraft is a fully, it is a full goddess technology. It's a way of you to interact with that feminine side of the universe, from the highest dimension all the way down to the lowest. It's self-development. Um, so in a weird way, it's kind of like a spiritual warrior. When you really know yourself and you're really clear, you have very firm boundaries. Your circle is cast by the clarity of purpose. Your wand is your focus. When you are focused on personal development and you are focused on having you're always strengthening your relationship with the earth and with the divine goddess, you don't have problems like energy intrusions. You don't have problems like malevolent spirits. You don't have problems like uh, ghosts are waking you up and telling you to talk to so and so. So we see really weak psychics, really weak healers, really weak people in spiritual uh, positions because they're just simply not clear. They don't have some very basic values, and they really haven't taken the time to look at these very basic things. Is the universe male or female in my mind? How do I relate to it? What do I stand for? What am I all about? You know, so this is my thing on, hopefully you got some clarity on, are you really a witch, or is this just a title you give yourself? And if you are a witch, are you in the development process? Have the gods not chosen you? Because I am under the belief the gods choose you, the powers that be choose you, and you're always preparing to work with them, for them, and create a better world. If this isn't really what you're about, then I would probably do some self reflection and do some cleanup, and maybe just say you're a witch in training, or you are a magic user, or you play with magic. You know, you're playing with your intuition. You're not. I feel like the gift of psychic abilities is also a gift of the goddess, which is the female principle of the universe, is receptivity to receive information at the different levels. So if you're toying with being a Christian and a witch, or a pagan and a witch, or a Buddhist and a witch, maybe this gives you clarity to go, no, or I thought I was, but those values aren't as strong. You know, if you're hexing people as a business, I would probably just say you're a magic user, but by my definition, you don't qualify at the level of goddess crafting. Just because you want something doesn't mean you deserve it. Doesn't mean you have it just because you self-proclaim it. You know? So if you want to, so look at, if you're just wearing the stereotype costume, if you're just bitter and jaded, you're a broken witch and you need healing. Like, until you're ascending, you're doing the ascension path, and you're working with the universe to make the world a better place, you're doing every witch a disservice, and you're not in your full power. You've lost your power, and so you're looking towards witchcraft to regain your power. And I'm telling you, it's the goddess's will. You're either in her good grace and you have the power, or you're seeking the power and she doesn't claim you as her own.